And welcome to the perfect. We are now recording. I'll call the September 15th board meeting of the Edmonton Metropolitan Transit Services Commission to order. And just before we get going, let me talk to you a little bit about our normal opening processes. I want to remind everybody that as you heard the announcement, we're live streaming. And it's going to be recorded and available to the public on YouTube. Today's board meeting is a hybrid meeting with some board members and participants located physically in the Commission's office here at 6th Street and Jasper Avenue in the city of Edmonton, and other participating from their respective places of work for the duration of this recording via Zoom. And I see Councillor Stuart Houston, Councillor Andrew Knack online, and welcome you too. And then thank you to all who have joined us today at the transit office, as well as those who are viewing our board meeting here online or later watching the recording. As we start every meeting, I'd like to begin by our land acknowledgement. So on behalf of the board of the Edmonton Metropolitan Transit Services Commission, we would like to acknowledge the traditional land on which we are gathered is Treaty 6 land. We would like to thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as the Cree, the Dene, the Saulteaux, the Nakota Sioux, and Blackfoot peoples. We also acknowledge this as the Métis homeland and the home of the largest concentration of Inuit south of the 60th parallel. This region is a welcoming place for all peoples who come from around the world to share the Edmonton metropolitan region as a home. So with that, I'll move on to the revised agenda that was sent out last evening. And I would look for a motion to approve it as is recorded. Thank you, Councillor Harris. And any questions, errors, or omissions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, we'll use the hand, raise the hand function online. And that's a unanimous. Thank you. So I'm assuming that Councillor Munkoff-Swain will join us when he is able. Okay. So we have approved the agenda. And now the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And on the consent agenda is the approval of the September 1st, 2022 special board meeting minutes and the procurement summary report. Any questions? Could I ask for a motion? Thank you, Councillor Gronberg. And I'll ask you to read that into the record then, if you don't mind.
Yes, thank you. I move that we move the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Thank you very much. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Gronberg. All right, on to the agenda. And we have the number 4, the City of Edmonton update. And over to you, Mr. Jankowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we did want to bring forward a brief update on the activities that have taken place over the course of the last week and a half or so. We are very thankful for particularly Councillor Knack's leadership in getting us through a process which ultimately saw us in receiving a resolution from the City of Edmonton, the resolution that you see before you on the screen. I just want to speak a couple of minutes with regards to the process that we went through to get to that point over the course of the last week and a half or so. The matter was first brought by the administration in response to a motion that was passed back in March of this year by Edmonton City Council, a motion which spoke to certain concerns that the City of Edmonton Council had raised with regards to the original idea that was documented in the business cases back in 2020, and the idea of contributing a number of Edmonton transit service hours to the integration with the routes coming in and across the Edmonton boundaries. That premise that was articulated in the original business cases really formed or underpinned the creation of this commission. And early in the mandate of this term of council, council did express concerns that we, as part of our work to develop an opening day service plan, we and our consultants have been dealing with, and we worked into or we developed solutions to over the course of the preparation of the recommended opening day service plan, which you considered as a board at the special meeting of the board on September 1st. We had coordinated the presentation and timing of the presentation to you at the board with the timing of the City of Edmonton's administrative team report to their executive committee on September 7th, as well as to their council on September 11th. And through that process, we worked very, very hard to make sure that the board's messages were heard by the city council, and that the work that had culminated in the presentation of the recommended service plan was accurately represented to Edmonton City Council. The presentations on September 7th, I am very thankful to a number of members here of the board that attended on September 7th, either virtually or in person. Chair Broadhead spoke to the initiative. Councillor Laurie spoke as the chair of the Finance and Audit Committee, and Councillor Munkoff Swain, who hasn't been able to join us, also played a key role in communicating some of the other 7 members' concerns to Edmonton City Council. In addition to that, we had a number of other participants that also spoke to the merits of the opening day service plan, and indeed of the overall regional integration approach, and the approach of creating a collaborative solution to all of the transit woes, the transit challenges facing the 8-member municipalities and the region as a whole. We also at that meeting had representation from Karen Witchuk of the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board, as well as Malcolm Bruce from Edmonton Global. And we also had a number of other stakeholders that came forward. We had representatives from End Poverty Edmonton. We had representatives from the Downtown Business Association. We had representatives from the students' unions of some of the post-secondary institutions here in the Edmonton area, as well as representatives from the Edmonton International Airport. And all of those spoke to the various merits of creating a regional solution to ensure that all of our residents and all the key people that rely on transit are able to access locations that they need to get to across municipal boundaries. There were also representatives that particularly from labor unions that also spoke to Edmonton Council, spoke to some of their fears that we believed we had addressed through the work over the course of the last number of months, and fears that really, in my mind, had been largely alleviated through the approach that this board advocated and this board heard presented on September 1st. The approach of creating additional service within the city of Edmonton and really supplementing the existing services, existing Edmonton transit services in a few key corridors, supplementing those existing services with intermunicipal services crossing across Edmonton. At the end of the day, I'm extremely happy to report that Edmonton Council did pass by a vote of 10-3 the resolution that you see on your screen, and I want to thank not only the folks that I already spoke about today, but also some members of the Edmonton administration that assisted in that regard. The city manager's involvement was instrumental, along with the involvement of the deputy city managers and the representatives from Edmonton Transit in communicating the key aspects of the proposal that we had brought forward, and in particular highlighting the fact that our proposal did not negatively impact the existing services within the city of Edmonton. At the end of the day, the city council and particularly Mayor Sohi did highlight that they were huge proponents of a regional solution and working on regional transit, but they did express some concerns with regards to some of the funding associated or required with providing the additional service across Edmonton. And they did indicate that they would be considering this matter further. While they agreed with the opening day service plan, they would be considering the funding requirements aligned with the development of our own budget for EMTSC for 2023. They would be considering it as part of the City of Edmonton budget deliberations. We remain hopeful, and I'm sure Councillor Knack can speak to this as well. We remain hopeful that through that process, we will continue to get good representation, and that we will be able to demonstrate the value of what is being proposed, not only to the residents of the 7 municipalities around Edmonton, but also to the residents of Edmonton themselves. As a number of the stakeholders alluded to in their presentations in favor or in support of the proposal, there are a number of people within the city of Edmonton that rely or are looking for this type of service in order to get to key locations beyond Edmonton's borders, get there more effectively, more efficiently, get there to places of higher employment, and achieve other benefits. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation and happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Thank you, Councillor, Mr. Jankowski. I appreciate it. And before we go to questions, just a couple of comments. Certainly, I too want to thank those that came to speak, and they did a yeoman's work. Councillor Knack, well done. And you need to take a bow here, quite honestly. And for Councillor Laurie and for Councillor Monkoff Swain, thank you for your contributions. Eloquent, to be sure. On a go-forward basis, there's 7 of us or 8 of us on council. I'd like to hear all the voices come around, and then for those who are able to under circumstances, because we each have a voice, and so under those circumstances, perhaps we can consider that on the next opportunity. It was compelling, quite honestly, to hear some of the voices that came forward. The gentleman from Stop Poverty Edmonton, I thought he made a compelling case for local provision of regional transit services to provide an opportunity for those who are in sort of entry-level positions to transition to the higher paying jobs in the outlying areas. And he did a good job of presenting that case. And then, of course, the presentation by Edmonton Global, in fact, EIA and all of the rest around the idea that regional public transit is really table stakes for site locators looking for region in order to access or find regions to locate big organizations. And it is indeed a checkbox that needs to be there, regional transit service delivery. Otherwise, they don't even look at the region. You don't even get on the list, never mind to the short list. And so I thought that was a very compelling case. So my comments, Councillor Harris, over to you.
So the question that I have is, so if we look at this two parts, this resolution, I try to be an optimist. The city of Edmonton in the number 1 effectively was confirming what the rest of us have already confirmed. Is that a fair assessment? that they would proceed to contribute to EMTSC Phase 1 service plan.
That's a correct interpretation or a categorization. I think they are in agreement with the various elements of the service plan that was presented, the various routes that form the service plan, and that's what the first statement really alludes to.
Yeah, and so being an optimist, I see that as a positive thing. They, as a council, had to come together to come to that conclusion that the rest of us have already come to, which I respect, and I think that is a good news story. The second part, I think we are all in the same boat. We all have to take what we're going to review over the next little while in terms of the budgetary requirements. And we're all going to have to, as individual members going forward, we're going to have to make decisions about what's good for our individual municipalities and collectively for the commission. Is that a fair assessment? So we're all in the same boat. So if I look at this two-part resolution, I see it as a good news story, and that we all have to work forward to get to where we need to go so that this thing can be stood up and appropriately funded and resourced and appropriate. Is that a fair assessment to make, Mr. Jankowski?
We're certainly hopeful that through the work that we're carrying out now to prepare for a draft budget for presentation on at the October meeting, and ultimately to receive the input of this board with regards to and bring back for finalization in November. That data that we're preparing, we're hopeful that it will represent a true balance of all of the interests at play, that it will represent the value of the service that is being proposed relative to each municipality, and that those costs would then be appropriately considered through the various budget processes, and ultimately the requisition processes coming from this commission to the 8 members in order to make sure that we can fund and deliver on the promise of the opening day service plan in 2023.
Yeah, and all of that said, I would encourage everybody to look on this as a good news story. We have a heck of a lot of work left to do, or yet to do. And ultimately, I see this very positive because now we've got 8 municipalities moving in the right direction to get to the right outcome that we've all been working towards through the development of the business case to where we are today. So that I see as a positive thing, and we'll get there. I'm very positive about that.
Me too, Councillor Harris. Thank you for those comments. Any other comments? Councillor Finstad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my comments may not be quite in the same light as Councillor Harris, but because it gives me some pause that Edmonton's commitment is unfunded, and it seems like there was not real strong support for the second phase, which is actually very critical to the ongoing success of this organization. We as a municipality are being asked to go all in, as are the rest of you. And we're very supportive of being regional players, but I just hope that that commitment is felt throughout the entire region and not just by a few. And my concern here is that the government of Alberta is providing great faith in this organization. And I wouldn't want to see that because of the actions of a few, that they would force upon us a transit service that we may not like or enjoy. And I think that was part of the excitement around this in the first place. Was we're probably the only transit operation in North America that gets to choose their own destiny by having a commission that's not foisted upon us by another level of government. So although I appreciate the fact that Edmonton made this attempt to stay with the party, I think they could have been a lot more forceful, and I think they could be a lot more showing in their support of this organization. So for that perspective, I'm somewhat disappointed.
Thank you very much, Councillor Finstad. Any other comments? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Knack.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to share a few thoughts. And again, first, I actually wanted to extend my thanks to all of you. I mean, to ETMSC admin, to those that came out to speak. This was a very much a group effort to getting to where we were. And I appreciate Councillor Finstad's comments. And I'll offer a few thoughts. I mean, I think realistically, there was no way to change part 2 to a funded service package because truly we didn't have the final number. And so, you know, we kept playing that sort of what comes, the chicken or the egg comes first. And so this gets us so that the ETMSC can produce the final dollar amount. I think there was sort of ballpark numbers talked about at council, but it was hard for council to approve something without a final dollar amount. So that's, I think, where that piece came from. I mean, so I wanted to offer that as one reason why that might have seemed a little bit less enthusiastic, when I think really it's just a process piece. I mean, of course, if something was quite odd and it came in far above the ballpark conversations that were being talked about, then I think that's a different question, but I'm not expecting that to be the case. So that's one piece. And then just the other comment on phase 2, and very much appreciate, as you know, there was some hesitation, including from some members of council that voted in favor of this motion, but expressed some concerns around what the next piece looks like. I think part of what the next body of work is, there's what's not included in this slide here is a subsequent motion that ultimately get debated at the next council meeting, that where we can essentially, as a council, make sure it's very clear about what kind of information is expected for the phase 2 conversation. This council really hasn't had much conversation around that at all, because it's very much been focused on phase 1. So it will be nice for Edmonton City Council to provide a bit of some clarity, I would say, in what we will need as Edmonton City councillors, and what information we would like from the MTSC to help make sure we're informing that phase 2 conversation. So that is a motion that's going to be debated at the next council meeting. I expect that will pass based off the conversation that had occurred at the council meeting this week. So just thought I'd offer that.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. That's very encouraging news. I appreciate that. If we understand what's required to allow a decision to be made, that's we're halfway home. In any case, any other comments? Seeing none, then we have a proposed motion, I believe. Let's just waiting for it to come up. Oh, we're moving on to this then first, is that correct, Mr. Jenkin?
I don't think we actually prepared a motion to receive that. I think it can be integrated into the motion at the end of this particular item as well, and just receive the information relative to both agenda item number 4 and agenda item number 5.
Fair enough. Then I'll just continue past the microphone over to you, sir.
Thank you. And really, this is going to be, I think, fairly quick. The board will remember that at the last meeting, and in fact, over the course of the previous few meetings, we had presented various elements, be it in closed or ultimately in full open session. The last meeting, the various elements of the opening day regional service plan. And these were indeed the elements that were also considered as part of the City of Edmonton's consideration that we just spoke to. The next few slides simply are a repeat, just to refamiliarize all members of the board. The overall network that we are now proposing and have proposed is the one that you've seen a number of times now, with the 11 key elements. And on the subsequent 11 pages, there is a in your package and on the screen, and just flipping through this very quickly, there are the 11 route segments that serve all of our member municipalities. While there are still some discussions ongoing with regards to final refinements associated with those, which could result in some minor changes to the costing that has been presented on page 25, we have the cost sharing formula that has been advanced, and this, along with the plan elements that we just flipped through, these in our mind really then start to form the basis for the preparation of the board's operating budget submission, the draft operating budget submission that you will see in October. These regional service costs will be the vast majority, about 60% of the 2023 operating budget. Local service, as we've discussed with the board, is expected to be about 20% of that 2023 budget, along with the pooled costs and the debt repayment forming the last 20%. So we've got all of these elements that we brought back. There are no significant changes, even though some discussions are continuing. And as recently as 2 hours ago, we had a discussion with one of our members about one of the route elements, but we are confident in submitting this compendium of the 11 route elements, and we will be making the final refinements in consultation with some of the municipalities going forward. So that brings us to a discussion. We can answer any questions that the board might have with regards to those elements or with regards to any of the package that you saw back on September 1st and that you see a subset of here today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jankowski. So we're looking at page 24 of our package. Basically, any questions, comments? We have seen this before, but Councillor Finstad, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess the primary concern with all of this is, as Mr. Jankowski mentioned, we were in deep discussions just prior to this on some clarity around misunderstanding with regards to some routing issues, is that we only got this information a few weeks ago. Really haven't had a chance to review either the financial implications or the route implications in detail with our subject matter experts. And I'm just hesitant, if you will, to push a motion forward to support this when, from my perspective, there are a lot of unanswered questions. And personally, I believe that a deferral of this motion might be in order for us to all get a more clear understanding as to what the route implications are. Some are far more complex than others. Some are fairly straightforward, and the cost implications. So that would be my recommendation with regard to this at this time.
Are your questions related directly to Metro West number 2?
No, the Metro South Airport. So
Or yes, sorry.
yeah.
What would be the implications of a deferral?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So the most recent discussion that took place a couple of hours ago revolved around the suggestion that the original 2 routes that are currently operating in the Highway 2 corridor between Century Park and the airport, that those 2 routes through this process have been merged into one route and resulting in some efficiencies. That most recently has been expressed as a concern to the city of Leduc. And I think it's recognized as well by the city that losing those efficiencies could impact the financial situation that's represented on slide number 25. We are proposing to continue to work, and we discussed just this afternoon some further process elements where we're going to be meeting with Leduc staff to try to get to a common understanding with regards to that one route. What we have as a motion for the board's consideration is to allow us to simply use the 11 route elements that you have seen numerous times now as the basis for the preparation of the draft 2023 budget. We will certainly use the results of the ongoing discussions on that particular route segment. And then I should say there are some other discussions that are going on as well. And all of the discussions that are taking place amongst the member municipalities and our project team that are taking place now in order to refine the elements, refine the costs in particular of those elements. Those will be reflected in the draft budget that we bring forward. But at this point, I think making sure that we've got these 11 route elements as the right route elements, even though they might require some adjustment, we need to land on this in order to be able to bring a draft budget to you in mid-October. Delaying that, I think, will cause some significant angst. So I'm respectfully requesting that the board acknowledge that there is still some minor refinement work that is taking place, but that these route elements are essentially the right route elements to use in preparing the budget.
So as I understand it, then the motion that's before us is that you would use this as a foundation for the development. Do you in fact see that motion having a latitude to continue to work with the city of Leduc and Leduc County in terms of managing it? I hear your heart for this, Councillor Finstad. Would that caveat, knowing that you have the capacity to influence that still?
Yeah, my prior concern was that the routes were fixed. These are what they are. And if we as a board approved it, the budget would be built around those specific routes without taking into consideration some nuances, if you will, in some of the regional concerns that are out there. So that gives me a higher level of comfort. And I appreciate the efforts that we're going through to get the clarity that we're looking for, that there's some misunderstandings that, oh, it looks like a route straight up Highway 2, but they forgot about how much servicing goes on in the Nisku Business Park and things of this nature. So it looked like it was the same route, but totally different. So
Okay, so fair enough, and I appreciate that. So we're actually not approving. We are giving direction for you to use this as a foundation, which I think will provide that opportunity for you to do that. Motion that the board direct online. Do you, Councillor Houston, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to speak a little bit, to Councillor Finstad's concern and his suggestion to defer. I think I understand, there's certainly more work to do. And there certainly has been a lot of work that's already gone into place, and I really appreciate the City of Edmonton, approving the motion to approve the service plan. And I think that the amount of work that's gone into this, I think the City of Spruce Grove, and I hope the rest of the board is ready to move forward with it today, because there is more work to do. There certainly is. And I go back to what Councillor Harris had indicated in regards to the cost analysis and the finalization of routes. There is definitely a lot more work to do, and that'll come out in the budget process, which we're going to take part in October. So in regards to the concerns of the board, or to Councillor Finstad, and including something that maybe would be an amendment to the motion, And if I could capture this amendment so that you could be easily seen, I would like to amendment to state that the board support the approval of the opening day service plan that aligns with the service expectations and an analysis of the financial commitments by each member municipality for such. So what I'm basically saying is that we support the approval of the opening day service plan. And as Councillor Harris indicated, with more work to do, that this aligns with the service expectations and analysis of the financial commitments by our member municipalities. So all it's saying, all the amendment would say is that we support it, recognizing there's more work to do based on the budget implications that we're going to be discussing.
Thank you, Councillor Houston. Can you, do you have that in form that you can email us so that we can sort of work that into, because what it,
I do.
okay, and then maybe we can massage this into an amended motion to, I think there's, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Jankowski, we want to avoid at this point in time the idea of approving, but rather to use this as the foundation for developing the budget. Is that correct?
That is correct. At the end of the day, the board has the responsibility to approve the budget for the first year of operation. And I think it's fully recognized that there are going to be situations where perhaps we will not be able to completely balance all of the interests of all of the member municipalities, but we're striving to present an overall balance that achieves the highest level of strategic objectives that the board has put forward with a reasonable financial plan, mitigating or balancing any significant impacts on the 8 municipal members, any significant financial impacts. So we're fully cognizant of that. What we need to do is we need to get to a point where we have an approved budget within the next 2 months. That is the time frame. We need to put together a budget so that we can then move forward with creating that opening day operating plan, negotiate all of the service delivery agreements with the member municipalities. And the one thing I want to guard the board, I want to make sure that the board is fully cognizant of, is that if the suggestion is being made that we go forward and that we seek individual budgetary approvals within each municipality, while I recognize that that would be the optimal situation, that process would, I suspect, end up in significant delays to our target date of starting operations in the spring or summer of 2021. We are fully cognizant of all the financial imperatives. I know that Ms. Shea Smith has had a number of discussions with a lot of the financial folks in our member municipalities. I've had the discussions with the CEAOs. We are bringing forward we hope, a package that correctly reflects some of the fiscal realities within the 8 member municipalities, and we will strive to work with all of the administrations to make sure that those are the costs, the impacts, the benefits, the potential pinch points are all recognized. But quite frankly, we have to get on with this. That's my I want to convey that to the board. We are running out of time. We are running out of runway if we are seeking to put an opening day plan in operation for spring or summer of next year. So I'm fully committed to having all the consultations and all the discussions with all of the municipalities, recognizing that there is an imperative to have a final budget approved by this board in November of this year.
Yep, fair enough. You know, the interesting thing is, and I throw this out just as a general comment to the board, is This is the first one. And requisitions from other commissions, wastewater commission, is just part of life within all our municipalities. This is not part of life yet in our municipalities. So the first one is going to be difficult, to be sure. And we got to, and I clearly hear the imperative of time. And so I want to acknowledge that and also acknowledge Councillor Houston's working of an amendment that has some decent language in there around consideration and preparation, those sorts of things. And we'll work through that. Councillor Harris, I know you have a comment. You're up next, and then over back to you, Councillor Houston.
Obviously, when we look at this in total, we as the board have to look at the grand scheme of things, but it's a whole thing. So when I look at it, I look at Metro Northeast, which is the service that comes out of Fort Saskatchewan, goes to Clareview. And so we currently have so many service hours, and there's a proposal, obviously, to add a Saturday service and some increased weekly service. And that ultimately came out of the analysis that was done in the business case. And so I can see where administration came up with that and why it's there. When all is said and done, if we decide we don't want a Saturday service, if anything, or an increased frequency during the week, I think ultimately that's a decision that our community needs to make, because we're going to pay the bill on that. Does it change the quantum for everything? Probably not. But in that context, there's some things that I think we individually as member municipalities should be able to speak to through the course of this is the template. We have an opportunity to refine it going forward to get to that end state that we can all live with. It's better to have us moving in the same direction on the one bus as opposed different directions on different buses, to use that bus analogy. So if that's a reasonable assumption of what you're getting at, then I can support that going forward, recognizing there will probably be some fine tuning going forward before we get to a final budgetary number that ultimately each one of us has to pay within the requisition. Is that a fair assessment, Mr. Jankowski? Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Houston.
Yes, thank you very much. I did send in the amending motion. I sent one copy to Paul. I sent one to Wes on email. I sent one to Councillor Laurie. I sent one to Councillor Harris for an amending motion. But the amending motion really speaks to providing some certainty that there's more work to do. It doesn't handcuff anybody. It just, and it's not that we're going back to member municipalities every year, as Mr. Jankowski said, for budget approvals. I think what the motion says is that the opening day service plan needs to meet the service expectations of the member municipalities and the financial commitments for such. And that simply stated means that that we have more work to do. I can tell you right now from my perspective, and I don't know about the other councillors, but we don't actually have, until we get into the budget part of it, we don't actually have a final costing for our city at the moment. And I'm here to support the routes. I'm 100% behind the routes. We've done a lot of work on it. Our route from Stony Plain servicing Spruce Grove and such, we're quite comfortable with it, but we don't have a total accurate assessment of the service hours, the cost analysis of that. And you know what? My amending motion just says that to give Councillor Finstad some, certainty that there's more work to do on it. And just would like to get some support from the board to make the amendment to support that going through.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm reading your motion here, or amendment to state to support the approval of the opening day service plan that aligns with the service expectations and an analysis of the financial commitments by member municipalities for such. Can we integrate that into the motion? I hear with you. I think there's a legal aspect to the word approval that we might want to save for the final approval of the budget. I believe, so maybe support the use of the opening day service plan in the preparation of the final budget, that sort of language.
Yes,
Uh,
that would be,
Would that work okay? Something
Yeah.
to that effect? Councillor Laurie?
Hey, Mr. Chair. The motion's disappeared, so I'm just gonna pull it back up here on my end. In the amendment that's being proposed, I almost find it to be duplication of the motion that was already there. As you mentioned yourself, it does not specify an approval at this point in time. It does specify using this plan in the formation of the budget. And as part of the formation of a budget, there would be analysis. There would be consideration, there would be debate. So, you know, I think there's a way to put, you know, maybe some additional verbiage in. But you know, it's to be considered in the preparation of the draft 2023 operating budget. It's not to approve the draft operating budget. Consideration includes consideration for changes. And I think as Mr. Finstad said, Councillor Finstad said, you know, if they have some concerns, I believe those would be considered in that. The further discussions with our administration. What concerns me the most about this potential amendment is the discussion on the analysis of the financial commitments of member municipalities for such. I'd like to understand, maybe Councillor Houston can shed some more light. So whose analysis is that? Is that the commission's analysis? Is that the individual members municipalities analysis? Is there a time frame tied to that analysis that is being looked for? As we've heard, and as has been a concern going back to months and months and months ago, was getting the financial information into the hands of our municipalities, into the hands of the subject matter experts in our municipalities, in order to have that ready for each of our individual municipalities' budgets and corporate plans. Now, we understand that that's not going to happen, and I'm concerned that the further this gets kicked down the road, the harder that then becomes. And if our administration is prepared to create a draft budget based on this opening day service plan, that is the catalyst to fine tune that budget. And if we delay that by putting analytics in prior to that draft budget being portrayed, I'm cautious and concerned that that may push us 1, 2, 3 months further down the road to actually having a draft budget to which we would then debate, consider, etc. So, you know, maybe Councillor Houston can speak a little more.
yeah, thanks very much for sharing your concerns in regards to the word analysis. I think the word simply stated is working in conjunction with the board. And this board has the option to work that through the budget deliberations, and the analysis of that, of the financial commitments that are going to be coming to the member municipalities have to come back. We certainly don't have that at the moment. And this is what I would say is, without overthinking the amendment, it just supports the idea that we are approving the opening day service plan, but the opening day service plan still has to align with the service expectations of the member municipalities and what are the financial cost implications for that. So the analysis is done by the board and by our subject matter experts. I don't know that at the moment there's been a lot of flow through information on that. And that's where we had a little bit of a concern from our community. But I think this amendment to that would just help allay any concerns we have in regards to the analysis. But thank you. And maybe the word, maybe the approval word, as Mr. Our chair sporadically said, should be maybe changed.
Fair enough. Thank you, Councillor Houston. I believe we're close. It's just the nuances of the wording. Councillor.
There you go. Thank you. That's perfect.
Mr. Jankowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And listening to the the conversation, I think I may be able to offer a clarifying suggestion. What I'm hearing is the need to make sure that the board has the full information with regards to the financial requirements and the ultimately the financial impact. What is it that's going to be provided or allocated to each municipality? And that's certainly our intent. Our intent is to bring forward as part of that draft operating budget, which will be shared with the board initially at the organizational meeting. And we will seek the board's input. But if I can allay some of the concerns, we will be bringing forward a full quantification of what the cost allocation to each municipality will be. And that cost allocation will include the specifics relative to the regional routes for each municipality, as well as the ultimate allocation of the pooled costs and the debt costs. Those together will form the ultimate quantity or the ultimate magnitude and the size of the requisition for each municipality. That will be brought forward, that information, that draft suggested requisition amount for each municipality will form part of the draft budget document that we will bring forward in mid-October at the organizational meeting. And that will then provide the opportunity for each board member to take that information and to have the appropriate level of discussion. And we can certainly be involved in that discussion with the administrations of each municipality. I think that's what Councillor Houston is looking for, is to make sure that before the final budget amount is considered, or the final budget is approved by the board, that there is an opportunity for dialogue with the financial people at each municipality relative to that draft requisition amount, if I can understand what's being discussed here. So if we were to add, Councillor Houston, the language at the end of the third bullet that
That's
suggests, if we were to add that the 11 regional service elements comprising the opening day regional service plan and the recommended regional route service allocations be considered in the preparation of the draft 2023 operating budget and the detailed draft municipal requisition amounts. If we were to add that in, and perhaps make it the detailed individual municipal draft requisition amounts, would that address the concern? That will then provide the information to the board members about the total amount that is being suggested for each municipality, and then each municipality would be able to appropriately evaluate that within your administrative cadres.
Councillor Houston?
I think I'm aligned with what Paul is suggesting. I mean, it's very similar.
Yeah.
Detailed individual municipality draft requisition amounts that aligns with the service expectations, that aligns with the municipal. If you could just add at the end of that aligns with the municipal service expectations, and the rest of it, I get it. I understand the analysis will be done, Mr. Jankowski, and I appreciate the feedback on that. And the service expectations that each member municipality, because I'm here fiduciary to the board, and I'm here to make sure that this service plan goes forward. And if you can add that at the end in regards to the municipal draft requisitions, I can remove my other part of my amending motion. And if we can accept that.
So certainly we will attempt to meet that test as we're preparing our draft budget submissions to the board. And ultimately, it will be up to the board to make the appropriate decisions or provide us with the appropriate direction as to whether or not we have met that expectation. That's certainly our intent. So if that's what it takes to move forward, then I think you have our commitment to try to ensure that happens.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jankowski. That's totally satisfied. Appreciate
Fair
it.
enough.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, I'm becoming much more comfortable with the way that this is being presented. I still just do have a question, and it's related to just listening to Mr. Jankowski and talking about, that once this is presented in October, I would like it to be explicitly clear that it is the responsibility of the individual municipalities to undertake their own analysis. It is not going to be led by the EMTSC administration, though should they be requested to be involved, is I believe are the words that I heard they would be. So I just want to make sure that that's very clear.
I appreciate that clarification, because I think I think it's absolutely correct. We will provide all the input we can from the perspective of creating a balanced approach that balances the interests of all 8 municipal members, all 8 municipal partners in this regard. We will certainly attempt to meet all of that spirit of aligning with municipal service expectations, but ultimately the analytics need to be carried out at each municipality, and that it's not going to be possible for us to accurately represent the interests of each municipality through that kind of an analysis.
Fair enough. I think we're all speaking the same thing here, to be sure. The idea here is that we want to work with each municipality to get the numbers right at the end of the day. And Councillor Finstep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify that the detailed budget analysis will also include a very detailed route, I guess, as to how the numbers were derived and what the route expectations would end up being. Is that a fair assessment, or am I overreaching?
Looking at James McDonald, I think it might be an overreach. Certainly, there's going to be a very detailed service planning component of work that needs to be carried out prior to opening day. We had envisioned that work would largely take place over the first 2 or 3 months of 2023. We need to approve this budget in advance of that, recognizing that there might be minor refinements through the detailed service planning work. But I'm not sure if we're going to have that detailed, this is the timing that each bus is going to stop at each location in time for the budget approval.
That's not quite what I meant, but I just meant that here's the routes, here are the sort of expected stops or whatever, and just making sure that they do align with the expectations. So that would be thank you for the clarification.
Very good. Any other comments? Councillor Houston,
No further comments. Just a question to Mr. Jankowski. Mr. Jankowski, on the cost allocation framework, in this package and on this document, I've seen 2 numbers, and I just want to clarify the cost allocation. On one part of the document, our earlier draft said that Spruce Grove was 62% and Parkland County was 13%. And this one goes 62.5, and then the other one is 13.5. So I just wonder, initially it was 62 and 13. So I just wonder why there's a difference in the number. I don't know if you guys did some more work on it or what, but just a question. It's close, but just a question.
Councillor Houston, I can clarify. So when I prepared the final version, I looked back at the tri-municipal agreement, and the actual percentage, the current percentage that Parkland County pays is 13.5. And I expanded it in the cell. So it really reflected what is currently in place today, which is the principle with which we used for that allocation.
So you said they were paying 13.5, but now they're paying, is it 12.5 that they're paying now?
Sorry, what is it? Sorry, my version doesn't have it. What is the version on the final? Do you have it, Paul?
Can you go to
Sorry.
page 25?
Yeah.
For a
Just one
sec.
sec.
You got 62.5 and 12.5.
Yeah, 12.5, sorry. It's 12.5 and 62.5. So in the other version, it was 13 and 63 because it rounded it up. Because
Yes,
I
see that.
I didn't show the decimal point.
Okay,
So
so
I
this,
expanded it now.
okay, thank you. So that aligns with the further analysis that you did. Okay, thank you. That's all you need.
Yeah, and it aligns with your current agreement.
Okay, thank you.
That's why I showed it that way.
Okay, well, seeing no further questions, Councillor Houston, can I get you to make the motion then?
I would be my pleasure that the board, I'd like to make a motion that the board accept as information, materials and discussions related to the city of Edmonton's update as presented and direct that the 11 regional service elements comprising the opening day regional service plan and the recommended regional route service allocation be considered in the preparation of the draft 2023 operating budget and the detailed individual municipal draft requisition amounts that align with municipal service expectations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Houston. Any, certainly accept that motion. Any opening comments? Go ahead, Councillor Harris.
Just as a question of clarification, so we've got two unique things here. The receiving the stuff of the city of Edmonton is almost a unique motion in its own right. And the second part of it is a motion in its own right as well. So if the board is comfortable combining these things too, I think just, you know, from a procedural standpoint, it's a little bit odd, but I can live with it if it gets to the end result.
Does anybody on the board want to split these two up?
I think they'd be better split because they are so diverse in the way the material is covered.
Okay. Councillor Houston, any concern with that?
No, we can do them one at a time. Perfect.
Okay, fair enough. On the first motion then, any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried unanimously. Perfect. Any comments on the second motion then? Okay, again, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And great discussion, by the way. I mean, that's what we're elected to do, is to run those things down for our municipalities. So appreciate that. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Jankowski. Appreciate that. And we are now going on to the next part of our meeting. Let me just get the agenda up again. All right, well, we are now then moving in camera. Would someone care to move in camera, move the motion to move in camera? Go ahead, Councillor Harris.
Would move that the board move in camera in accordance with the provisions of Division 2 exceptions of disclosure of the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act, RSA 2000, Chapter F-25, as per Section 16 through 28.
Thank you very much. Call the question. All in favor of going in camera? And that's carried unanimously. We'll take about a 8-minute bio break and allow us to move in camera, do those things that need to be done. And we'll reconvene at 4:15. Welcome back, public and members viewing this presentation later on. just a brief overview of what was discussed in camera with the Board of the Edmonton Metropolitan Transit Service Commission. Governance, government and stakeholder relations update, service plan communication strategy, member base fee options, service charges for non-member municipalities, service transition agreement update, transition of paratransit services, and draft 2023 business plan elements. And now we have a motion for the board to consider. Councillor Harris, if you'd like to make that motion.
Yes, I'd be prepared to move that the board accept as information, materials and discussion as presented in camera.
Thank you very much. Any opening comments?
No, I think we've had a fruitful meeting. We're talking about things that are moving our commission forward in a positive way. And they're discussed in an appropriate context and appropriate time.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from any member of the board? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's passed unanimously. And thank you very much. Meeting adjourned 6:10. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, Andrew. Have a good night.